Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
You know that feeling when someone shows up for you just when you need it most? That's what Uber is all about. Not just a ride or dinner at your door. It's how Uber helps you show up for the moments that matter. Because showing up can turn a tough day around or make a good one even better. Whatever it is, big or small, Uber is on the way. So you can be on yours. Uber, on our way.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and today we're talking with Sasha Elezovski. Sasha is a holistic career coach, consultant, and founder of Alchevate Coaching, where she empowers ambitious women, both professionals and entrepreneurs, to grow, lead, and earn boldly without burnout or guilt. With over 13 years of corporate experience as a certified HR professional and a master's degree in HR development, Sasha specializes in HR and recruiting, career coaching, and consulting, offering strategic insights that help women confidently thrive in corporate and scale their businesses with inclusive, profit-driven teams. Sasha, I am thrilled to have you join me today, so welcome to the show.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm really happy that you said yes. I'm excited to have this conversation with you today and to explore the incredible work that you're doing. I think it's so important that we remember that it's not just the entrepreneurial world that's really starting to take notice of how we are having those interactions with each other, but making sure that even in the corporate environment, things have changed and wanting to make sure that the culture really reflects that. So I really want to get into the questions with you. So first of all, your work as a holistic career coach and founder of Alchevate Coaching, it caught my attention, especially how you blend your corporate HR background with a more mindful, well-being focused approach. So can you take us back to the beginning? Like, what pivotal moments led you to this work and inspired you to create a new way for women to grow and lead without burnout or guilt?
Yeah. So when I was married, this was years ago, maybe 7, 8 years ago, I can say I felt like I was in jobs that were unfulfilling. I was underpaid at the time, working all these hours, thinking, if I just stayed a little bit extra or did a little bit of this or did this extra thing, like my boss would just notice me and promote me and pay me more. And so that happened until pretty much, I ended up filing for divorce August of 2020. And it was the divorce that kind of was like, you need to wake up. You now have these two children. You're going to be a single mom. You now have these two children that depend on you. So things have to change. You can't afford to be underpaid anymore. And my divorce lawyer of all people said to me, Sasha, you have a master's degree. You have all these years in corporate. You are a certified HR professional. Like, you are a very smart woman. Your earning potential is a lot higher than you think, right? Because I kept telling him, I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And he's like, girl, you have it. You need to go out there and get it. Literally within weeks, I was interviewing for roles that I was too afraid to apply to. And for the one particular role I got hired on the spot pretty much. And when I negotiated my salary, it's almost like it was I don't know what your higher calling is, but like, it was almost like God was telling me, just say it, right? Just ask for it. Like, before, I used to be so afraid. I'd never negotiated my salary, but I just blurted out a number and they were like, okay. And that was that. And I like, oh my gosh, it was like, it became addicting after that. After that, a year later, my really good friend, she ended up referring me to another position, like a PM. This is a higher level position that I had no, like I would not have ever applied to that role before, but they ended up interviewing me. They loved me. And again, I blurted a number and I said, this is what I want. This is what I need. This is, for me to make me, for me to be happy. Within 2 years, I increased my salary by $35,000. So it was just like a moment of like, you know what? I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like I need to make changes and I need to just go for it. Nothing is stopping me but myself. So I hope that answers your question, Leslie.
Yeah. I
Um,
love how you did say, though, nothing is stopping you but yourself, right?
yep.
But also, and it's not a bad thing, too, right? Because we can get into that fear-based thinking because, like you said, I never thought it even possible to
Yeah.
ask to be in this particular type of position or even ask for this type of money because you always were maybe being led to believe like this is your role, this is what I value your role as being, so you have to accept that. And I love the fact that you were saying no, especially your divorce lawyer was smart to say, hey, you've got these skill sets, you have the ability. Just go out and do it. And for you to say, you know what, I'm going to push past my fear, even as uncomfortable as it was,
Yes.
and just go and do it. That's, I think, someone had said to me the other day, like, courage is confidence in action, right? So
Yes.
you were
Yep.
confidently, and because courage isn't, we think like, oh, we get the courage first. It's like, no, being confident in what we do, what we bring to the table is the courage, but we don't realize that it is. And I love the fact that you said, you know what, I am going to do it. If other people believe in me, why don't I believe in me? And being able to do that. So I love the fact that you said, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. And then being recognized, again, to being able to
Yeah.
increase. So I love that. And which leads me to my next question, because a lot of high achieving women chase success without realizing how much it's costing them until they hit that
Mm.
breaking point, right? And I think what, like you were saying in the beginning, like you were unfulfilled in your job and you thought that if you did more, you'd be recognized, that you would be rewarded in essence, right? So what patterns have you seen, especially now with what you're doing? Do you often see that signal they're women especially are pushing too hard or they're prioritizing the wrong things? And how do you help them redefine ambition in a way that actually supports them and their growth?
Oh my goodness. I'm a high achiever. Always been, right? I have always, like every time I reach the milestone, I always ask myself, okay, great, got it, beat it. What's next? Right. And so it's almost as if like I was chasing something like some sort of high, but I wasn't really like, once I got to that point, it just didn't feel fulfilling anymore. I actually had a conversation. I'm in this mom group in my town, and I had a conversation with some moms because some moms are like, I am one in particular said, how is it that I can stop wanting more, right? Because I feel like I'm in a good place. I feel like, I'm in a place now where I have work life balance. I have time for my kids. I have time for my, like, I feel like everything is so good, but it's like, oh, it doesn't feel like, okay, complete. Like it feels like, okay, well, this is too comfortable right now. Like, let me make it uncomfortable, right? Or let me make it crazy and chaotic by wanting to push to the next level, right? And sometimes you have to, the one thing I ask every woman that comes across my life and is always like, I'm always busy, I'm always this, I'm always that. I'm like, where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? Because I know where it came from me. When I was younger, in order to get my mother's attention, my mother's love, my mother's approval, I would do the next thing, or I would make sure that I got an A plus, or I would make sure that I did XYZ. And it was always something that I had to chase because my mom was not the type of person to just say, hey, job well done, Sasha. So I felt like I was always striving. And it wasn't until I broke my codependency with her that I just decided, you know, like I think I was really achieving for approval or to get some sort of love or some sort of something, right? So I always want women to get to the bottom of their ambition. What is it that is driving you, right? What is it that you feel when you are in a good place that you feel like you are missing, right? Like ask yourself those questions. Is it a societal thing? Is it a childhood thing? Is it something that came from trauma, right? Because a lot of us hide behind that to get to the next thing, right? Another thing too is how to, you said focus, so that we're not focusing on the wrong thing. Check your imposter syndrome because there was one particular client that I had. She had something like 27 certificates. She was on her way to getting her PhD. She had all these accolades. I mean, like impressive stuff. But she had like maybe a total of 5 years of corporate experience. What that shows to me is it's almost like you don't feel like you are enough. And so you need to have all these shiny things behind you hanging on the wall for people to know that you are enough. You don't need 20 different degrees. You don't need 20 different certificates, right? So if you're sitting there thinking like, I want this level or I want to make this much money, let me go ahead and get another certificate or let me go ahead and get another degree, think twice, right? Because it may be better for you to, and this is a bias thing, right? Shameful plug, but it may be better for you to invest in a career coach that helps you get to that place without having to spend. And listen, I am a master's degree holder. I am not saying that you should not. Education is very important to me in my household as well. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't go out there and get educated, right? But definitely look at like how much you're spending versus how much you're getting out of it, right? Because if you're going to go get that degree, make sure you go after that job. Because if every time you're looking at job boards and you're saying, you know, I can't apply to that job because I'm not qualified enough, then what is the point? Right? Like if your confidence is not allowing you to get to that next level, it makes no sense going and getting 20 more degrees. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And you actually talked a couple of things that I really liked was that when someone's already like, okay, this feels good, but is there something missing? Am I getting too comfortable? Someone I know posted on social media recently about how people were talking about having a boring job, right? And it's like, or having a boring business, I should say. And if it's everything's working well, like a well-oiled machine, then boring can be considered good because then that means that you can have the lifestyle that you want, that you can actually enjoy your life. But I think we get so caught into because there's that hustle culture, right? Like you should want more. There's that idea that if you're not striving for more, then what's the point of life? But that's not true. It's not just about how much you can get. It's how are you living your life and enjoying it? And then also, again, maybe part of it is the seeker of looking for that external validation, that external appreciation, or someone saying, "Yeah, you're enough. You're doing the right things. You're good enough. Okay, so I think you're qualified now that you've got 20 certifications instead of only needing the one or not needing any at all because I actually enjoy talking with you and I feel like just the culture add that you would bring to the business is enough for me that I can bring you in." Some of the people I've worked with came from different industries. I work in the industry of law for many years, and some of the people that I worked alongside came from the food industry, but they were willing to learn and step outside of something that they were not even used to and decide and had that, again, the confidence in themselves to take the step to say, yeah, let me try this. I'm interested to learn, and stepping into a career that they may not have otherwise pursued if someone had been sitting at the desk interviewing them saying, well, you don't have a certification in this, you don't have a background or, any training in this area, which, to me is like, just because it looks good on paper doesn't mean it's going to work out. So I love
Mm-hmm.
the fact that you brought that up because it's so important to recognize that sometimes we're always looking for more, and the more isn't necessarily adding more to our plate. It could just be that maybe there's a part of our life that we want to fulfill more and just not recognizing it and thinking, oh, it has to do with my job or how much I'm making, instead of looking at like quality of life, like where can I maybe give back. Maybe I can mentor someone. Like there's so many different things we can do to fill our time, but I think we get so caught up in how can I accumulate more stuff, more things, you know? And so, yeah, I love that you talked about that. One of the things I want to ask you about is burnout, because that's something, and I don't know if you have these conversations with your clients, but one of the things that I know is that the women that I talk to, pretty much every single one of them, including even when you do research online and you just look in forums where people are having conversations, they're not even really talking about burnout. They're talking more about the symptoms of burnout, like being overwhelmed or really super tired all the time, or they don't have the motivation, or they don't feel like doing things, or they're maybe losing interest in their passion, and they're not recognizing that some of the things of their patterns that they're in life are contributing to a burnout phase, which is creating all of these symptoms. So I know that you are all about growing and leading boldly without burnout, or earning boldly without burnout. So how do you guide women to use their energy strategically when they're making career or business decisions?
Well, I always say if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense, right? So like, one thing I want would I coach my women to do is how to trade. You know, we're so willy-nilly to give our time. We're so like, yeah, I'm going to work 12-hour days and I'm going to work 50, 60 hours a week. But if you really think about it, let's say you're making 100K, and don't have me doing math out here because I'll embarrass myself. But let's say you're making 100K a year, right? And that's your salary. But you're working consistently 50, 60-hour weeks. Do you realize that you're not making the money that you think you are? But people don't see it that way. I need people to make time their currency. Do you understand? Like, I need people to start realizing that the more time that I expel on something that is not really giving me what I am looking for, especially if you're not making the money. If you're sitting there and you're, you know, spending all this time thinking that you're going to get a promotion, thinking that you're going to get an increase, please, that is not the way you do it, right? Like, I need people to start thinking of time as like more valuable, because you can always make money, but you can't make time back. So like if you're the person that's consistently working 50, 60-hour weeks, how do you change that? How do you convert that, right? Like, start asking yourself, what is it that I can do this week that will move the needle for me? Where do I need to be in 5 years? I want to make this much money in 5 years. So what activity should I be spending time on? Because a lot of times you're spending, like I was that woman, I would spend 15 hours on a PowerPoint presentation just because I wanted it to be perfect, right? Like, for me, perfectionism drove a lot of it because I wanted so badly to get to that next level. So I guess what I'm trying to help women is like, do a weekly check-in for yourself. Like, how much time did I spend doing something that I don't want to do? How much time did I spend working? And is that getting me closer to my goal of making this much money, right? If you're in a job or in a company where you feel like you're stuck and you're not, you should be spending money job searching, right? Like instead of putting it into a job that's stuck, that keeps making you feel stuck, right? So how do we switch that energy to something else that's moving the needle, right? Does that make sense? I hope
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I always say is like, what are you trading for every yes that you say, that you commit to, right? Because again, like you were saying, the people pleasing, the perfectionism, being in positions where you're looking for that external validation or someone to notice you doesn't mean that they're not noticing you, but then they could be taking advantage of that. Okay, well, this person's doing the work, so this is great. They're happy with what they're doing, and they're not really expressing what they're thinking or feeling. The person's not going to know, but also that person may not even really be self-aware enough anyways to be noticing that someone's putting in that extra time, unless of course it's brought to their attention. But I love the fact that you were saying like having those weekly check-ins. Time is our most valuable currency. It
Yeah,
is time. And then our energy is that resource. It's not unlimited. We have to understand that time and energy are finite, right?
exactly.
They accumulate the next day, but they're not going to be constant. Like you don't get more than 24 hours in a day, and you're not awake the full 24 hours, and you're not working a full 24-hour days. And nor would I want to. And again, like you were saying, even if you're making $100,000 a year or more, how, the So let's just say $100,000 a year. Even like you said, working 50, 60 hours a week, is that giving you quality of life? Just because you're making the $100,000, do you have time and the energy to do other things to have quality of life? Because people want to live a life they love. But if you're just to make that 100K, which I've found in corporate, a lot of the time it feels like when you are just, let's say, chasing the more as far as the dollar sign goes, that a lot of that comes with having to put in more of your time, to trade more of your time to get more money. And so are you trading away all of that valuable currency just to make money that you're no longer having a quality of life, right? And that's one of the things I think is so important, because we are not paying attention to that, especially when we're high achievers. We're wired for growth. We're looking for the new opportunities. We're looking for ways to like move the needle and like do things quickly, as efficiently and quickly as possible. And sometimes we have a hard time saying no because everything seems important right now. So I
Yeah.
really feel you're right. And, and I'm sure you have that, the
Mhm.
women that you talk with, right? So when it comes to them protecting their energy, especially when they talk about time and how much they're trading and they're in high pressure environments, what is something that you teach your clients to really focus on in those high pressure environments so that they can protect their energy using their time well, if that makes sense?
Yes. So I have them do an activity. It's something called the time audit. And so there's three, I need, I want everyone to like, what I walk them through is put all of their activities in a week. Like, what does your typical week look like? Write it all out, even if it's like grocery shop, like whatever. Write everything out, write your entire week out. And so for every task, there's three things. There's optimizing, there's draining, and then there's neutral. So I want you to label everything in those three categories. Then once you categorize everything, I need you to look back and take a look at it, because if you have way more draining stuff, which if you're working in corporate, I can I one time I did this myself one time, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm signing myself up for this. Like I'm the one putting myself in these situations, right? You need to work on cutting out one draining category at a time, one draining part at a time. And then the optimizing part, right? Like, like I said, going back to your vision boarding, like when you're thinking back, where do I want to be in 5 years? Write out 5 things that will help you move the needle every week. So those things are the types of things that need to be in your optimizing category, right? On a weekly basis. But my point is just make sure that you are really, really careful about how many draining activities you have a week, and then work towards eliminating them one at a time. Not all, because that will probably create burnout in itself, right? Like you may not be able to eliminate all, but you'll be able to work towards making sure that you're cutting those things out little by little, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to try to make an overhaul. An overhaul would be it would be, I think, too hard to try to overhaul your entire life. It could become very overwhelming and trying to figure out, okay, well, am I doing this right? Because that's another thing too, right? When you get to that stage, and especially if you're on borderline in a burnout phase and not even recognizing it, like I said, having an off day could be meaning that for the past 2 weeks, you've been burning the candle at both ends, not recognizing that you're falling into bed at 11 o'clock every night after scrolling either social media or maybe just finishing up a work project, trying to turn your brain off, and you're not getting a good enough sleep, waking up exhausted the next day, and you've been doing that for 2 weeks and not recognizing that's what happened, because up until that moment, it hadn't really affected until all of a sudden that just fatigue just turned on. So I really feel it's important that we do that we take, like what you were saying, I believe our calendar can be our friend or
Inventory.
foe. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And when when you have clarity on what it is that you're doing, and especially what goes in your week, and you're not putting all of the stuff on your calendar that doesn't really belong there, and maybe even something that somebody else can help you with or can take off your plate altogether. That's another thing too, is like asking for help. A lot of women I know have a hard time doing that because, one, they have to explain it to somebody and then they might not get it right, which is okay. That's the possibility. They might not get it right, but it's still giving you some time for yourself. But also, if you're explaining something to someone and you know exactly what it is that you want, then being able to explain it to them so that they can at least take it and do what they think it is. And as long as you have that open communication, you're going to get at least as close to that product as you're looking for. So I just wanted to throw
Yeah.
that in there.
Yeah.
Right.
And also, Leslie, I think, this activity that I just outlined, it's a great activity. However, if you don't get to the root of the problem, like
Mm-hmm.
people pleasing, seeking approvals, imposter syndrome, those kinds of things are what's going to lead you to like it's almost like watching the hoarders that show. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
help someone clean out their house one time, right? But if you don't get down to the root of the problem, they're going to go ahead and fill that house back up again, right?
Yeah.
So you want to get down to the root of that, like that people pleasing part of you. If you find a hard time saying no, you need to work on that because otherwise you're going to keep finding yourself in that situation over and over and over again.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that. So let's move on to building teams because I think teams are important, especially because you work with women in corporate. So hiring the right support is important. We know that. But what are some of, I guess, the biggest mistakes you see when it comes to building teams? And I don't know if it's mistakes, but maybe it's just things that people are not aware of that when it comes to building teams that could be avoided. And what do you think is a smarter, more aligned approach for them to hire the right people?
Oh my gosh, not knowing what the heck you want from the beginning.
Mm.
I I was a product so two times in my lifetime I have been either promoted into or hired into a role that they really didn't think through all the way. And so what ended up happening is like I saw the job description, it was explained to me a certain way, and then what happened is as I was in the role 6 months in, it started changing because they were like, "Oh, wait a minute. We can just add this to the role and we could just add that to the role." And you can't do that, right? So you're going to end up getting people that are like, I feel bamboozled. I feel like and it happens a lot. It happens a lot. So this is why when I was recruiting, for example, I always made sure with the hiring manager, like, think on a day to day and not just think on a day to day what happens, but I'd like to speak to the person that's actually in a similar role that can tell me what actually goes on a daily basis. Because a lot of times managers are so far removed from the roles that they will tell you, will sit there and tell, well, this is what I want them to do. But I'm like, that's what you want them to do. But is that what they do? Right? Is that what they do on their day to day? So my advice to anyone, any entrepreneur that's looking, really, really take stock of what you want, right? Like of what you want this person to have. It'll determine how much time it takes for this person to carry out these things and then really, really put it out like, this is what I'm looking for. I actually took a consulting gig in September of last year. And it was one of those situations where we talked about social media management. Like I was helping them manage social media a little bit for them, side hustle thing. But then as time went on, they realized that they wanted someone to do sales and they wanted someone to do like, it just became a little bit like, well, that's not my scope. Right. And she was like, well, that's kind of like, I'm like, but that's not fair to me. You hired me into something, you didn't really, sales is completely different, right? Sales is not something that, you know, not all of us are natural salespeople, right? And honestly, if you want me to be your salesperson, I would have to be paid a certain amount, like a different amount of money than what I just asked you, right? There's like sales commissions, there's like entire pay structure for salespeople, right? So definitely write down on paper what it is that you really want this person to do. What task do you want for them to carry out? And then once you're 100% sure, I mean, I'd hate to say like once you're 100% sure, but because they say just do the thing before you're 100% sure so that you're not stuck there forever. I get that. But in this situation, you're playing with people's lives. In this situation, you are hiring someone and they are taking this role and that's their livelihood. So what you don't want to do is put them in a situation where now they're having to figure out, do I leave or do I go? Now I have to find something else because this person was not truthful or did not realize what the job was before. If you are
Mm-hmm.
going to tell someone, well, the job has changed, you need to be willing to pay them more for it, if that makes sense. So I think the number one mistake that people do, long story short, to summarize this whole thing, is not knowing what they want someone to do before they start hiring.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to know what it is. And especially you have to know if you've done it, you know exactly how you do it so that you can make it repeatable by someone else. And if you have
Exactly.
no clue, yeah, that's going to cause a lot of disruption. So, one thing I've seen over and over again, especially with high achieving women, women in general, really, I believe, is that boundaries aren't just about time management, they're emotional. So, when we're constantly accessible, we're overcommitted, we're trying to manage everybody else, their expectations, I believe it can quietly chip away at our energy and our confidence. And, boundaries, especially around our time and energy, are, I believe, one of the most important ways we build emotional resilience because when we protect our energy and we stay anchored in what matters to us, we're able to lead, we're able to grow, we're able to respond with so much more clarity, we're more confidence. So my question is, I believe women, because we wear so many hats, especially sometimes all at once, like you're a mom, so you have mom hat, and then you're a businesswoman. We overextend ourselves emotionally in business, I believe, anyways, taking on more than we need to be taking on, being overly accessible. We're saying yes to things that maybe drain us, like you were talking about, draining, neutral, what should be on optimized. But we're saying yes to things that drain us, or we feel responsible for everybody else's emotions and their outcomes. And so I feel like being intentional about our personal well-being and setting those boundaries is so important. And yet, women find it challenging to do this, especially without guilt. So what's your take on being emotionally resilient in the professional environment? And how do you believe boundaries play in creating that emotional resilience?
I think that we are very quick. Once we get addicted to setting boundaries, we are very quick because it can become addicting. And once you start realizing how much more time you have or how much peace you have after setting up, especially as a former codependent daughter from a narcissistic mom, it became addicting. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like, we're so quick to set the boundaries for others. We think that boundaries are for others, right? We say, well, you know what? If this person does this, I am no longer going to do that. But maybe we need to start saying to ourselves, like, okay, I need to set a boundary for myself, right? That, I will no longer say yes to something unless I ask myself three very important questions. Is this moving the needle for me? How is this going to make me feel? And I forget that the third question I help ask my leaders, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like we have
Yeah,
to do some
absolutely.
reflection. We have to
Hmm.
do some reflection, right? And that's our boundary. Like, I will not say yes to something unless I have fully reflected on it. Give yourself 15 minutes before, because sometimes, like, it's so, like, someone will say something to me, and then without even thinking, I say, okay, yes, because I'm so used to that, right? But the thing is, like, give yourself an hour. Let's say an hour, screw 15 minutes. Give yourself an hour to really think about that and let that sit in. Ask yourself the very important questions. Is this going to be moving the needle for me? Right?
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
you can decide whether you say yes or no. Set that boundary for yourself to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and I think one of the things though it's really hard that I found is that sometimes it's hard to hold yourself to your own boundaries, but at least, it starts somewhere. For it to become habit, you have to start somewhere. But I think it's
Mhm.
important really asking yourself, like, what, again, is it in alignment? Am I doing,
Yeah, exactly.
whatever I'm doing if I'm doing this out of obligation instead of alignment? And again, I always say, like, what am I trading for this yes? Because when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And that's not a bad thing, but it's just being intentional about those yes decisions so that when you are saying yes to something, that it's not out of obligation, it's out of alignment for you. It's what makes you feel good, like you were saying, that you're not going to feel resentful later on when as time goes on. So I think it's important. And that really leads me to my next question because one of the biggest shifts I find for women who want to lead with more ease is moving from the word should, from moving from should, because should is like that one, like I should be doing this, I should be doing more of that, you know, but to move from should to aligned action, how can women start making decisions from that alignment place instead of obligation? I know it's still probably coming back to those questions, but I guess really the question I want to ask, because I know we talked about this a little bit already about making sure that you have those questions answered, is what are some signs someone should look for when they no longer feel aligned with something that they're in, like the role that they're in or a path that they're on?
If every time they think about it, they start their, because okay, so I'm into chakra work. I'm very big
Okay.
into chakra work. And I always say to people, like, when something comes up, and as I said that, my breath kind of went away for a second. So that might mean something. I don't know. But as you're thinking about, your next step, or as you're thinking about your current step, what parts of your body are sounding off? Are the hairs standing up in the back of your neck? Is your stomach getting butterflies from anxiety? Is your chest getting tight? Is your throat closing up? Is your head like hurting a little bit? Pay attention to those signs, right? Like your body is telling you, you got to pay attention to it. What part of the body, right? Like, for example, if it's the throat closing up, it might be something where, you need to speak on something, you need to say something. There's something that you might need to do there. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like always pay attention to, you know, where in your body or what happens when you think of something. Because if at the end of your day, you are feeling more drained or you're feeling more exhausted to the point where you are not able to do the things you love. Like if you're an artist and you love painting, right? And you don't have time for that stuff anymore because you're doing this draining thing, right? It's time to move. Another thing too is like if you're having conversations with your friends, pay attention to the actual conversation you're saying. Like the words you're saying, how you describe something. If you're constantly kind of like, I can't stand this, or oh my God, like you wouldn't believe, or those are like the signs. Just pay attention to how your body is feeling, how you're talking about it, and how you're feeling about it. Are you having a hard time waking up on Monday mornings? Do you dread Sundays? Do you not want Sundays to stop? Like for me, when I was in corporate, and I was in jobs that, and I was in a very demanding job, I didn't like Sundays. People enjoyed Sundays. I didn't because I knew at some point it was going to end and then Monday was going to come. Fridays and Saturdays were my days. Sundays, not so much. I couldn't enjoy it. I was always thinking to the future. I couldn't really enjoy Sunday. So, like, if you are, and I'm sorry if I sound like I'm all over the place, but I'm thinking faster than I'm speaking. But if you are constantly in this feeling of dread or feeling stuck or feeling like, oh my gosh, when is this going to stop? If you're constantly saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to, I'm dating somebody right now. And one of the things he always says is, I got to get my head straight. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get myself a business. I'm going to get myself a business. I'm like, well, babe, you're 55. You're not getting any younger. So at some point, we need to take that first step, right? Let's take that first step. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. I hope I didn't sound too all over the place with that
Yeah,
one,
no,
but
no, no. But that's okay because you're passionate about it and this is real. This is life and I want the women that are listening to really listen and lean in and hear these things because this could be somebody right now who's sitting there thinking, "Well, how do I even know what's happening? Like what are things that I can look for?" And again, paying attention to what you're thinking, how you're feeling, what the thoughts that are constantly on a loop in your mind, the things that you're constantly saying to other people, to again, your body. I know there's a book called The Body Keeps a Score. I've never read it, but I'm sure it talks about how your body reacts to things. And it happens that things will, like stress, will start to manifest itself in your body as well. So it's really paying attention. So I love that.
don't let yourself get to the next decade wishing that you had started the decade before.
Yeah.
Like me, I'm going into my 40s. And when I turned 30, I said to myself, I really, really want to start my business and I want to go full throttle. If I had gone to my 40s, I'm 36 now. If I reach my 40s and I don't reach at least half of the potential of what my business is, I'm going to sit there and it's like a vicious cycle. I'm going to sit there and like always resent myself for not doing it, right? So don't let yourself get to a point, like my boyfriend now, he's 55 and he's been thinking about this for decades now. And I'm just like, don't let yourself get to 60 without doing what you want to do. Don't get to that
Mhm.
point. 10 years is not really a long time. My daughter is
Yeah.
8 years old and it flew by. Okay. So that's the one big thing I say. Don't let yourself get to your next decade wishing that you had done what you wanted to do the last decade.
Yeah.
And that's it.
It's the thing is that if we can continue to say we want something, but we're not going to take even one small step at a time, even if it's like dipping your toe in the water, like when you go to the beach and you want to know, is the water cold or is it warm? If you don't do that, dip your toe in, you're not going to know the temperature of the water. It's the same thing. You're never going to know unless you take one step at a time, no matter how small it is. It doesn't have to be a huge leap. It can just be one tiny step at a time. So I love that you said that. I have one last question for you, and I really want to hear your answer because I feel like there's just been this life story of yours, I feel, is coming through about all of the things that you had done and found yourself to this place where, again, when you got to that crossroads, like, okay, what do I do next? And being at least encouraged and inspired by someone to say, hey, don't you already know you have all of this going for you? So, with that being said, what is one thing you would go back, if you could, back in time and tell your younger self before you took that leap?
Hmm. Oh, Leslie, don't have me,
Oh,
don't have me crying on your podcast.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to make you cry.
It's
I just
okay.
feel like you could really lend a great answer to this. That's why I asked it.
No, no, no. It's okay. I think it's important for everyone to know. So you are enough. You are enough. Worth is not something that someone else can define for you. Worth is not something that someone else can give you, or worth is something that you determine it is for yourself and you embody. So I always felt like my worth came from other people.
Mhm.
My ex-husband, does he not, does he love me? Does he like me? I was so worried about what others felt about me or thought about me, my bosses, my people around me. But I never really sat down and asked myself, what do I think about myself? Because I was so worried about what everybody else thought of me. And once I went through this journey. I started this healing journey after I got divorced because unfortunately my ex-husband was also narcissistic. So I started to realize that there was a pattern. Like I had a pattern that I attracted these narcissistic type personalities in my life. And it came from my narcissistic mom. It just felt very comfortable, right? Very similar. And so um, I really started the journey because I started to realize there's something wrong with the way that I am going through my life. And it was almost similar to how I attracted jobs too. The same types of jobs over and over again, or the same types of opportunities, I felt like I was attracting these people because I didn't feel like I was enough. And it's crazy because now that I am in this dating world, right? Like I'm dating someone now, but when I was like single and stuff, I realized like, dang, I've been single this whole time. I've been single for so long. Why? What's wrong? And it's like once I stepped back and I realized how it was so easy for me to find someone before, it's because I had no standards. Now that I have standards, now it's hard for things to get through, right? Now that I have standards, it does get lonely when you have standards, right? Like you no longer are, the dating pool starts getting smaller, right? The job opportunities start getting smaller because you start to realize, like, no, I don't want a job that's not remote because I need to make sure that I pick up my kids at 3 p.m. every single day so that I can take them to Taekwondo because they deserve that. They are my children, okay? And I have to raise them. So once you start setting standards for yourself and you start really, that starts to getting addicting and you start realizing that you deserved everything that you did not get. You deserved everything that people thought that you didn't deserve. And, I think the biggest thing, like I said, is, you are enough. I am enough the way I am.
Mhm.
I have a right to my standards. I have a right to a good quality of life, but that starts with me. The quality of life starts with me. It starts with me deciding what are my values? What is important to me? How do I want to carry up my life? Not at all by, what you let your boss say, or, like, oh, hey, I need you to stay over, like, this many, not any of that stuff, right? It's really what I decide my quality of life is going to be and how I move from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope,
Yeah.
I'm sorry for
No,
crying there, but like,
no, never apologize for being authentic because you're being yourself. And I love that. I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today and sharing your journey, Sasha, from corporate HR roots to the work you're doing today, really, and supporting ambitious women to build their careers and businesses that feel aligned with themselves. I really loved hearing about how you guide women to lead and grow without, guilt how you reframe ambition, the powerful role boundaries plays, because we also know that's important, how energy plays in sustainable success. And like I said, you've brought such a thoughtful perspective, even around like the younger self question. I really love that. I know a lot of women who are listening today are going to be inspired. They are going to really understand that they can have what they want, that there is a way forward. And it starts with, like you were saying, knowing that you are enough as you are. So thanks for being here with me today and sharing your voice and your wisdom.
Thank you. I have one more thing. I remember that third question. So the third questions are, is this aligned with my values? Does it move me closer to my vision? And can I say yes without resentment? Those are the three questions you want to ask yourself before you commit to something. Okay. There you
Yeah,
go. I
I
got it.
love that. Love it. I love it. I love it. There you go.
Thank
And
you.
thank you so much. And to our listeners, if you'd like to connect with Sasha directly and learn more about her work, you can find her contact information in the show notes. Remember, when you honor your energy and you lead from alignment, you're not just chasing success. You're actually building a life that supports you from the inside out. Give yourself permission to grow in a way that feels right for you. Trust the pace that you're moving at and stay true to what matters most. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.